Okay. Hey guys, this what's going on. Been a long time, first of the year. So I had the opportunity to connect with Drew. He's on TikTok, and a lot of his personal finance content is around helping you build your net worth. And he very, very transparent about how he built his. And we're gonna go get into a lot of what his net worth is, how did he build it. But I thought it would be good for the conversation because for about 2, 3 years now, I have been talking about saving, investing, and how important it is. But oftentimes, with obviously with the rise of social media, we also often can get kind of distorted of what that actually looks like. And I really connected with Drew because not only is his format like anybody could do his format. He didn't do anything like miraculously different, but it's pretty textbook to all the to all the information like Millionaire Next Door and Simple Path to Wealth. Everything that you see, and he's a good example of if you start to walk down this path, what that could look like. Granted, he is 32 now, and we're talking about probably the last 10, 11 years, but when you think about math, 10, 11 years can be any span of time. So that can really run, and we don't know what will happen in those 10, 11 years, but it is possible to reach that. So Drew, I definitely appreciate you coming out and sharing a little bit of your time and a little bit definitely of your experience. But I want you to kind of discuss a little bit about your background and then talk a little bit about your net worth from there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jonathan. I'm happy to be here. Like Jonathan said, I'm on TikTok, but I honestly love talking about personal finance and helping people. It's honestly my life's passion, and so I'm happy to help with anyone I can. But yes, so as Jonathan mentioned, I'm very transparent. I show my net worth on TikTok, and initially a lot of people think it's bragging, but really I just love being transparent and showing what I've been able to do. And then, I tell everyone exactly how I got there. Right. So, I'm not hiding anything, but I think transparency is important. And I love just being a data point, right. And
Yeah.
helping and just being another data point that people can see. And again, if you're, if maybe if someone inspires to have a net worth like mine in the future, I tell them how to do it. But anyways, so let's see, my net worth right now is $550,000 roughly. I've benefited from, we've had a couple good weeks here in the stock market. That's definitely helped a lot. Yeah. So background, I studied industrial engineering in college. I went to Penn State University. I graduated in 2013, and I do definitely like to recognize, I guess, to start, I guess, like my privileges, right? So my parents were, I would definitely say, financially literate and savvy. Um, they were very frugal growing up, right? So we were very frugal, always lived below our means. And my parents are doing well now, but I always say, a lot of that was due to them being frugal, and they really like set up. And I learned a lot from them on just being frugal, living below my means, having money to invest. But so anyways, that helped. And then, like I said, I studied industrial engineering. That helped a lot as well. I was able to, get a good paying job coming out of school. I'm very transparent about my salaries on TikTok as well. So when I graduated college in 2013, I was making $62,000 per year, and this is in lowish cost of living cities like Cincinnati, Ohio. That's where I live right now. And then over the course of 10 years, my salary did increase all the way up to 100,000, which is my most recent job, all in, like, again, industrial engineering position. So again, that definitely helps, to have a solid career, I guess. But again, you know, a lot of what I did was very similar to my parents, to be honest, which was living below my means. A majority, let's see, I essentially my strategy was essentially to try and max out my tax advantaged retirement accounts every single year, which is my 401k, my Roth IRA, and my HSA. All right, we just got home. I apologize. We were on a little park trip that ran late, but my
No,
wife.
trust me, we all got young kids. So
Yeah, my wife is taking my daughter inside now. I'm actually gonna go inside too now, but I'll keep on talking here. Um, all right, but yeah. So I tried to max out my tax advantage retirement account. So essentially, I was able to invest between $20,000 and $25,000 per year, almost all throughout my 20s, and that is really the bulk of how I was able to build this net worth. And then we obviously had a really good stock market over the past 10 years, a really good bull market. Um, and that obviously helped, and but again, that just shows the power of compounding and growing, right? Especially if you can get to the point where you have like six figures invested, it really grows. And whenever you see that graph, right, that starts slow, but
Mhm.
gets steep at the longer you're in there, like it really is true. And again, I have the past 10 years to show that. But you know I always say, everyone has the same stock market, right? So I'm sure there were plenty of other kids, well, not plenty, but I'm sure there were other kids, that graduated the same time as me, and stuff like that. But maybe they, didn't, maybe they bought a new car, or lived in the nicest apartment, or did this and that. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, they probably just didn't invest as much. And 10 years later, I think that's the difference. But that's the majority, I guess, of my story, and kind of how I've gotten to where I am now. But it kind of happened all at once. Like
Yeah.
I had everything automated, right? I had all
Right.
my investments automated. Honestly, the first 3 years where I was investing, like I said, $20,000 to $25,000 per year, I didn't even really check on this stuff. I was too busy having fun in my 20s, to be honest. It
Right.
was just automated, and I didn't have to think about it. And then 3 years later, I blinked, and I looked at my Fidelity account. I was like, whoa, that's a pretty good start. So
Yeah, it's interesting, and I mean, I make the joke. It really is a joke, but if you read enough of these personal finance books, you'll realize how much Drew actually aligns with the data points that they present. The most recent study, he's an engineer, top millionaire, career is engineer. Um, he uses index funds that's pretty consistent. They have a little real estate in there, but the biggest thing, like you said, you were investing. Maybe you had the education of returns, but even if you didn't have the education of returns, the fact is you didn't know we were going to go on a 10-year bull run. You were just investing because you realized, okay, I can grow my money. There's a good path to wealth. The 10-year run was just a bonus to the activity that you were actually doing. Now, I know you always mention kind of the frugality. Like, was that something that you acknowledged early, or was it really kind of once you got in college, you're like, oh, you know what, they were pretty frugal?
you mean like with my parents and stuff like that?
Yeah, just your
Yeah,
surroundings. Did you realize like early, you like, yeah, we're you know what I'm saying, we're pretty frugal, or it wasn't until you got older, like, oh, okay,
I guess I knew we were pretty or yeah, I knew we were frugal at the time, but my parents never shared their finances with me and my sister. Like looking back now, like my parents are living a very comfortable retirement. But again,
okay,
that was from a lot of that was built on their comfortable retirement. Now was built on 40 years of again
yeah,
living below their means, which I witnessed. I never knew. It was funny whenever my parents went fully retired. To be honest, they upgraded their house,
right,
because they had the money to now, because they had been saving and investing for 40 years. But so growing up, I never knew that. I just assumed we were doing okay, right? But
right,
I just assumed we were not doing great, because I had there were I would see people driving BMWs. We never had BMWs. I would see people do all this stuff. We never had all this stuff. I just assumed we were just doing okay. But little did I know, it was just my parents living well below their means, so they could build and invest all this, grow and invest all this money for long periods of time, and it worked, very well for them. But yeah, I didn't realize at the time. But and then also growing up, I didn't understand the why, right? I was just like,
yeah,
oh, my parents are just cheap, right? But
right,
now that I'm older, and I'm and I started making my own money, and like I get it. It all clicked, and it makes sense. It's really the way. It's a very good way to build wealth. People always say, like, I'll make TikTok videos about being frugal, and people are always like, just go out and earn more money. right? But I always think sure, yeah, if I could find a job that pays me 20 grand more, of course I'm going to go
Right.
out and take it. But
Right.
like heck, if we could all find jobs, if everyone could just go out and earn more money, we'd all be rich and loaded, right? But
Yeah.
so it's not that simple. And again, I never want to downplay going out and earning more, right? That's a great thing. If you can do it, like by all means, go out and earn more money. But it's not always that simple. But one thing you do, I do think that you can control immediately, right? Is your expenses,
Right.
So
No, I mean it's definitely gotten out of the way. And one of the biggest things that what what you've been able to do not only for yourself that's so inspirational is like you said in your videos recently, is you left your job. And the I don't think people quite understand, because especially now, like everybody I didn't came in contact with has lost a job. Please don't go on LinkedIn, because you will see just a flood of layoff announcements and all those types of things. But it's the point of when you have done right by your money, you left your job, but it's the point that it now gives you the option of, hey, you probably when you major in engineering, you were all excited about it, much like all of us when we took our majors, right?
Mhm.
We wanted to make some money, but somewhere along the path, you had a family, you had a you got a wife, you have a child. Then your mind just starts to develop and mature, and it's not saying, "Hey, I hate engineering." Like I don't hate corporate. It's just my passion actually lies differently, and what I've done with my money allows me an option. When you talk about, and again, maybe you did know, because a lot of people who invest, it's said that they are forward thinkers. They like to think about how a decision right now is going to affect them 4 or 5 years from now. But can you kind of speak a little bit about the fact of, hey, when you started to make that decision of, hey, I'm about to transition, or I think you even mentioned that your wife is stay at home or what have you, and that's a
Mhm.
very good opportunity. But a lot of that is predicated on, hey, we can still manage our finances. It's not like as soon as you did this move, that 550 net worth started going down to 4 and 3 and 2. Like you're still holding. In fact, I think it increased for the last video. But
Yeah, just because of the stock market, but
yeah, you know what I mean,
yeah.
because of the stock market. But it's the importance of what that opens up opportunity wise for you, that now, yeah, you don't know what, what I'm saying, what things may occur, but you have an opportunity to try to discover.
Yeah. Yeah. I always say the best thing about money, or I always look at now, well, at least now I do. I look at money as a tool to provide, like to give you options, right? When you have money, you can. There's so many different things you can do, right? Like the couple examples I always give are, right? You can, like, if you have enough money, you can take maybe a lower paying job that you're more passionate about, right? If you have enough money, maybe you can do a contracting job and take off and take 3 months off every summer so you can, spend time with your kids while they're not in school, right? Or maybe if you have enough money, you can choose to work part time and work 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week, and not need that extra money, right? And then that gives you more time to spend with your family, or do whatever you want to do, right? So I always, now that I have, I guess now that's the way I look at money, is that it's a tool to give you options. But
Yeah.
I mean, when in my 20s, I did not look at money like that. I honestly, I remember when I graduated, I was like, I'm gonna, I'm gonna work my way up to the CEO. And then whenever I
Yeah.
get my first job promotion, I'm gonna get that new car. I'm gonna move into that fancy apartment downtown. And then, my next job promotion, maybe I'll be 30 years old, and maybe I'll get married, have a kid, and I'm gonna buy that nice house I'm gonna buy that mansion in the suburbs. Right? I had this progression of what I thought. Um, but that's why I feel very lucky that I just continue to invest. But now, like, my perspective has all changed, and it's all about, like, using money as a tool to have freedom with your time. And that's why I feel very lucky that I still continued to invest, and now I can have some of these freedoms with my time. And that's why I feel so strongly and passionate about trying to almost get this message out to people, and that, like, you can have some of these freedoms with your time, if you invest and save your money and grow your money, and that it can buy you some of these freedoms
So
that I feel very fortunate to have.
two perspectives I would like you to offer. Number one, you can already do it because you've done it. Talk a little bit about some of the decisions you made to really kind of cut your expenses when you were in your 20s, to allow yourself to have money. Because if you were making 60, 62, 63, and you were putting away 25 a year, is that with or without match?
That was I had a decent match, so I was probably
Okay.
putting away like 25 with
Okay, with
a
the
match,
match. So,
roughly. Yeah,
but it's still,
roughly.
even if you were doing 18 or so, you're still probably knocking on about 30, 35% your
Yeah,
contribution rate that you were putting up.
right.
And so kind of speak to some of those things that you were doing then, but then also, because like I said, you're a husband, father now. What decisions would you make now with the knowledge you have, and if you had to start from zero at 32 to begin trying to save and invest, what would you do?
Yeah. Let's see. So I did the math, and yeah, like Jonathan mentioned, I was making 62 grand when I first graduated. I was making 62 grand, but if you take out like all my contributions, I was essentially living off of $2,000 per month. That's like
Mhm.
after tax money. I was essentially
Mhm.
living off 2,000 grand a month, and obviously the world was a lot different 10 years ago than now with all this inflation. But I
Right.
remember like my rent. I had three roommates. I was in a 3 bedroom apartment with there were a total of four of us, and my rent was it was either 600 or 650 a month. My car payment was around like 300 a month plus like
Was this
50.
in Cincinnati as well, or
This was actually in Atlanta, so I lived in
okay,
Atlanta. I
Atlanta?
was in like a
Okay,
rotational program. You're in
okay.
Atlanta, right?
No, I'm in Charlotte.
Oh, Charlotte. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
That's
not
but
too
yeah,
far.
I was in Atlanta for 6 months, and then I did this like rotational program where I moved between Atlanta, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh, and then I ended up in Cincinnati. But anyways, this was in Atlanta first. So yeah, my rent was like 650. My car and my insurance was like 350. So that right there was about 1,000. And then I essentially had 1,000 left over for everything else. But yeah, it was fine, right? Like sure, that's why like sure I didn't buy really nice things, but I was okay with that. I was okay with that. But the biggest thing for me, I guess earlier when I talked about the automation, I just set everything. Like a lot of people, they'll first they'll first find an apartment to rent, right? And then they'll
Right.
find their car, and then they're like, oh, like geez, I only have you know $100 or $200 per month left to invest. Yeah, I mean, if you even have that, right? But a lot of people, in my opinion, do it backwards. They'll you know they'll set up their lifestyle, and then they just invest like whatever they have left over. But
Hmm.
the thing that I did, I think that I feel very strongly about that worked very well. Like whenever I was learning about personal finance when I graduated college, I'm like, you know what? Like I know how important it is to invest early and get the power of time on your side. I'm gonna max out these accounts, like no matter what. I'm just gonna set it up, do it, and then I'm gonna just figure out a way to live on the remaining, right? And so obviously, once you do that, like obviously I'm not gonna be able to afford an apartment for at that time like 1,200 a month was a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be able to spend 1,200 bucks on rent if I'm maxing out these accounts. Like I'm gonna have to have roommates, right? I'm gonna have to reduce that expense. I'm obviously not gonna be able to afford a brand new car as well and do all this other stuff I want to do. Um, but so I think that was a big key was um, setting this like making investing the priority and then kind of just living off the remaining, right? Versus the other way around. That was a big priority. And I'm very happy I did that. And I would, um, yeah, I'm happy I did it that way, to be honest.
So
Um,
part of
yeah, did I
your
miss anything on
oh
your question?
well,
I apologize.
yeah, yeah, yeah. How would you do it now? Now that you have a kid and a wife, how would you set things up now? And especially given the environment, how would you go about it?
Like in my current life, or you mean?
Yeah,
Or if I could,
with your current life, I mean, you might have to subtract the house, but if you were starting from scratch, like
oh,
right now,
with a family.
yeah,
Oh, I
yeah,
see.
with how would you
Yeah.
do it then?
So like the thing I always say, like your housing expense is always your biggest expense, like
Right,
always. And so to be completely honest with you, my wife and I, we bought our house, the house we bought, it's worth about $400,000,
hmm,
which is, it's a nice house in a city like Cincinnati. But so we bought in my, like, we bought probably a little bit, the house is probably a little nicer than really we can
oh,
afford,
okay,
to be
um,
honest. But again, I was okay with that because I have all this money invested, and like I really don't need to save any more, like that much more for retirement at this point. So
right,
um the other thing I always tell my followers is that, my viewers, that like I'm not saving any money right now. Like, to be honest, we're
right,
spending, especially since I quit my engineering job, we're not saving a dollar.
right,
But again, that's okay. I'm willing to do that sacrifice because I did all the heavy lifting and all the saving in my 20s, where now I can kind of afford some of these quote unquote luxuries, if you will. But anyways, where I'm getting at is our house is too expensive right now. So if I were starting over and I didn't have this $500,000 nest egg, we would be in a much cheaper house, much cheaper
okay,
house.
okay,
Um, because again, that's the number one thing that really affects your savings rate the most is is your housing expense. So yeah, we would be in a much cheaper house just so we had more leftover money to
hmm,
invest or save and do all that stuff. Cars, I had this 2009 CRV that I drove for many years. I hit a deer with it about 2 years ago, and totaled it. I was so pissed because literally I was planning to drive that car for at least 5 more years. Like, I was
right,
gonna run it to the ground, and I was so annoyed that I totaled it, and I had to buy a car. I ended up buying a new car again, but this is one of the luxuries that I would say I can afford now. Like, we knew my wife was expecting, and we wanted to have
the
a
space,
yeah, I wanted to make sure we had a safe car, right, for our family and baby. So we ended up buying a new car, and just it made us feel safer. But again, if I didn't have that this nest egg, I would have bought a used car, and again, kept that expense low. A used but reliable car, I like to say.
right,
But then I would have kept my car expense low. I always do, I think, a good job of cooking at home. I do like cooking, and I've gotten good at cooking over the years. So we try to do a pretty good job of cooking our meals at home. But those, I always say, are the big three: housing, transportation, and food. And that's how I would have kept these expenses. I would just keep those big ones low as I can. That makes sense. And I think those really have the biggest impact or factor.
yeah.
So
It's interesting. I read a stat probably a couple of days ago. Said 40% of people will experience an interruption in um, income. And so, whether that be fired, laid off, leave the workforce, what have you. But I think what people often miss in this whole piece is, like you said, you're not saving right now, and even if you did need to save, technically you don't really need to save another dollar. But it's the fact that there's likely going to be times where your money gets interrupted where you just can't save. And what I like to consider is you or enter into the conversation is you want to save while you have the ability to. You want to invest while you have the ability to do that. We might have lost Drew for a second. He'll come back. No worries. Um, but you guys have to understand the value and the importance of saving and investing. Drew is a hardcore example of what can happen when you save and invest consistently. I personally am an example of what can happen when you save and invest consistently. And it's for these times where the economy gets a little tumultuous. It's for these times where maybe you're trying to explore different career opportunities. It's for these times where you feel like your back may be against the wall. It's important that you understand your money can be a tool, the tool that's going to give you options. Everyone's going to have options, but these are options where you can select hey, I'm going to leave my job rather than take this abuse. Hey, I'm going to try this business idea. Hey, I got laid off, and the job market is extremely tough, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna figure out what my next steps are. This money can be a tool to buy me the breathing room so that I can make the next right decision, not a rushed or hurried decision. Money brings patience, and to get money, you have to have patience. It's very, 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 very important to understand how money can be such a tool for you. Guys, I can't express anything more than you that investing is ever so more important now than it was 10 years, 10 years ago. But it's even more important now. Thank you, Drew, for coming back. I know those technical difficulties we were playing around with it earlier. So
Yeah,
kind of
apologize.
no worries. One thing we didn't get to go over because I wasn't able to kind of screenshot your network from TikTok, but can you kind of run through what's that network look like? I know you have like
Yeah,
several
sure. Is
items.
there a way to share a picture or something on here or no? Because
Let me
I
see.
have a, if there is, I can do that. If not, I can, I'm happy to just talk about it.
You might.
Maybe not.
Uh, I might be able to do it. Where's the picture? Or can you see the button to present down low?
Uh, Settings. I don't see that option on my end.
I know a
I don't
guy.
see a present button. Um, okay. I can just talk through it if.
Let me see. Yeah, I was trying to see. Maybe it might be because I still
Or
have your it might be
if
on your page. Let me see if I can pull it up. What?
if you want, if I can like text you a picture if you want to present it real quick.
Yeah, if you put it in your
I'm trying to think of where.
messages in the TikTok and pull it up real quick. But I think there was one. Man, you've been pumping a while.
Um,
Yeah, if you send it through, go ahead and send it through TikTok. I can pull it right back up since we're online.
I think the first pinned TikTok on my page, I think it
Oh,
has it
is
at
it?
the end of that. I think,
Let me
yeah,
see.
the very first pinned TikTok video. I think at the very end it has it.
Mm, trying to see here. Yeah, try to see your pin, but why? No, it's not showing your pin videos.
Hmm.
It's just showing the most recent.
On the computer. It's the one
Yeah.
called like it's well uh I mean I can always just talk through it too.
Yeah, go ahead and talk through it. I'm sorry, guys. I was trying to get the picture for you.
So let's see. So I talk about this every day on TikTok Live. So
Yeah.
I think I know pretty well in the back of my head. But I keep around $20,000 in cash in a high yield savings account. And honestly, I'd like for it to be have a little more cash, but for me, it's enough. It's about 4 months of expenses for my family. So I think most experts generally say 3 to 6 months of expenses
Right.
for emergency fund. And I tend to be honest, I tend to be a little bit aggressive, and I'm okay being on the low end of that. So I do about 4 months. But I mean, it wouldn't hurt. It would be nice to have maybe another month in there too. But I'm okay for now with 4 months. So again, that's about 20,000 in cash in a high yield savings account. My 401k is about 250,000, 245, 250, and people always ask me how did that get all the way up to 250,000 at the age of 32? And that's just the beauty of compound interest. I did make a video about how much I've contributed to my 401k over the years. And so I did check all my old tax returns and stuff. I've put in about $105,000 of my own money into the 401k, or money being taken out of my paycheck.
Right.
And then I've had about another 25,000 of company match dollars put in. So all in, that's about $130,000 that have been put into my 401k. And that 130,000 has grown all the way up to 250,000, which again, that's like the power of compounding interest, right? And the stock market, and having your money invested, and obviously having a good bull market as well. Just to give one quick example, for example, I think around 2019, 2020, 21, we had some really good years in the stock market. 2019, the S&P 500 went up 27%,
yeah,
20%, crazy high, right? I think at that point I probably had maybe 150,000 maybe in my 401k, maybe a little less. We can just say 150 for the sake of the math. But if you take a 27% gain on $150,000, it's
right.
7 plus half. It's $40,000. So that year, my 401k went up $40,000 by me literally doing nothing. So again, but that's why they always say your first 100,000 is the hardest. Once you get to the six figures, it escalates so fast.
Yeah, it multiplies. You get to 200,000 very quickly. I think what was it? I think I saw it was 6. It took me 6 years maybe with matches and putting in to get to the 100,000, but then it took 2 years to get to 2. And even I even told you guys in the group, mathematically, I follow a lot of people who are really nerdy about this, and they really kind of spell it out. The first 15 years is really all you, and then really majority proportion wise. But once you get kind of past that 15 years, it really starts to overtake what you can do. And really, once you get 20 years and behind, that's way more than you could have put in for yourself. So it really just, it's like a wildfire how fast it grows after you get to that point. But that is just understanding it does grow. It's just the compounding piece is really it's just astronomical how it all works. So you got the 20K in cash, you got right now 250 in IRA, 401k.
Or it's technically a rollover IRA because I've rolled over my 401ks, but I think I have about 85 or 90 in a Roth IRA. And again, that's the same thing. I've probably contributed maybe 50 to 60 of my own money, and that's grown to 90 over the years.
And so you were maxing that every year?
Yeah, my Roth IRA. Yeah, that's generally, I'm sure you have the same mindset, but if you think the order of operations, generally you want to do 401k match, right, to get the free money, and then you want to max your Roth IRA next, and then eventually come back to trying to max out the 401k. But yeah, I essentially made sure to max out my Roth IRA every year, no matter, for sure. So that's about another 90. I have an HSA that's around 19-ish thousand. And with that, as I'm sure many of you know, you can invest the money into your HSA. So I keep around 3,000 of my HSA kind of in cash or liquid, and that kind of adds into my emergency fund as well, right? So 3,000 liquid, and then 16,000 of that roughly is invested in more index funds. Let's see, I have like a very small brokerage, like taxable account with maybe 10 or 15,000. I've started a 529 for my daughter, which I have maybe just 6,000 in there right now. She's almost coming up on 2 years old, which is a nice little head start.
Yeah.
You know, I put away about 150 a month into that 529, and again, it's just
Okay.
automated. I don't even think about it. But again, that's a nice little start for her. And then yeah, I think that's most of the investments. And then I have a rental property. It's a duplex. It's also in Cincinnati. I bought that about 2 years ago, and I did kind of the stereotypical house hack,
Okay.
where you live in, again, it's a duplex. So I bought it, lived in one unit, and then I rented out the other unit while I was living there. And that just, it helped to lower my housing expense a bit. Did that for a year, and then our family grew, and we realized we couldn't live in a 1-bedroom apartment and half of a duplex. So we ended up buying a single family home, and that's where we live now. But I have a little bit of equity and appreciation on both of those homes. So I think the duplex, I have about maybe like 60K of equity, which includes appreciation. And then the home that I live in now, I have maybe another 40 or 50,000 of, equity and appreciation. And then as far as cars, people always give me talk.
They give you slack about the equity in your car, but I mean, car
Yeah.
values went up the last couple of years.
Yeah, but yeah, that's so my I have a Honda CRV. It's a 2020. That's the car that I bought to replace my previous CRV that I mentioned earlier. I got totaled, but I ended up paying cash for that car because I needed a car right around when we were closing on the duplex, and so I had the extra cash, fortunately, and I like kind of needed the car, and so I ended up just buying it in cash, so it wouldn't affect what was happening with the mortgage approval and all that.
Right.
But so anyways, I have that car, and it's paid off, and it's worth about $29,000 in it's paid off. So the other reason why I'm okay with the lower cash position, and I always say this, is because if everything did hit the fan, right, and like everything went wrong, and I needed cash, honestly, I would just sell my 2-year-old like new CRV, and I would buy a 7-year-old car, right, or an 8-year-old car, whatever, and I would free up probably $15,000 in cash, right, and that So I'm very aggressive. A lot of people don't think that way. They just want more money in cash in their emergency fund. But again, I like to. I'm kind of aggressive, and not everyone has to. But
it's also I like mirage too. You know what I mean? Because even you've been in this, and as you go through situations. But I went through 2020, like 2019. I came in 2020. I didn't have my main income, and then COVID happened in March, and so the world was essentially like shut down, and so it was January through. I didn't really start the full-time working thing till July, I think, of 2020. And so I had the emergency fund. And so I was looking at what all happened throughout that time. Well, not saying this is going to happen every time, but unemployment at that particular time, you got an extra $600 bonus. Well, I ended up getting that, like, I got 12 weeks of that, like one big check, like right before I started, because it was such backed up. But I wasn't concerned because I was still paying bills, kind of like you, doing contract work, that type of stuff. That didn't enter into my emergency fund. And what it does is, after I came out of that, I'm like, okay, if I didn't need my emergency fund for it, and I know how much it is, it really helped me start to just evaluate how much do I actually need. Because there is a point where people be having just too much. I mean, if you got 2-3 kids, you probably do need about 30 grand sitting in the bank. But generally speaking, for most people, once you're in that 20-25 range, you really would be fine if you have just average skills for the workforce, by 6 7 months you'll typically get another job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not that big of a, you won't go into ruin. And so if you're holding another 25, that's cool. Or if you got a year, like we got a year, we probably got a couple years, because my plan is not, but my plan is to progressively get to about 2 to 3 years worth of cash. But that's progressively going towards, by the time I'm really living off the assets, because I want a couple years of cash, not all today.
Hmm.
Like today, I can, say push some to more investing or getting
Yeah.
another rental property or something of that nature. But getting too heavy on cash, that it takes you away from the aggressiveness, like you say, of getting into investing. And what you're trying to do, at least for me, is you got to get things out the way. So if you already have a durable car, okay, cool. Once you get over those little bit of hurdles, hey, we're, say we got the kid in school, or we figured out this is what life is. Okay, I'm not saving no more cash. I'm throwing every extra dollar I can into the market to start to build up some momentum to catch up. You know what I mean? Because once you get a good momentum, then you can be like, okay, I don't need to save as aggressively anymore. Or if something should occur, like your situation, even many others now, where you've been aggressively investing, you won't feel as bad when you're not aggressively investing right now,
Yeah.
because you did the hard work. Like,
Yeah.
just for normal people, it will come a time where you just can't invest. And even the people that I've talked to and had the pleasure of learning from, that they even said, yeah, I've been investing for a while, but I can't tell you that I invested every month. I mean, I tried, but I couldn't. There were times where I was starting a business, I didn't invest for 2 3 years straight, but
Yeah.
they had already invested when they could. So it's the point that even if you make those breaks or have those breaks, it's the point that you built up some momentum. The problem is, too many people, they take too many breaks and they don't start investing until they 44, 45,
Yeah.
and they want the same results of when you invest 25. I'm like, well, that means you got to live to like 90, you know what I mean, to start building up, which
Yeah.
is possible, but it's harder at that stage in life.
Hmm. For sure. For sure.
So good. What else? I know I talked a lot and I took a lot of your time, so I definitely want to be respectful. What else would you like to offer as far as wise? Definitely take a moment, kind of share your channel. I'm gonna link it down below, put when I put it on YouTube. So make sure you guys check it out, because the guy is, I mean, he is going when it comes to really diving in how to help, sharing information, but also a lot of his live. I think he goes live like 3 or 4 times a day, and he's getting. You can start to see what questions people are having. I know a lot of times it's good to hear what other people are questioning, what kind of things they're going through, because that's a good way of learning. And But he has a really highly engaged community that I've had the chance to be there. But it's fun. So I would definitely encourage you guys to go check him out, follow him, support every which way you can. I'm gonna make sure I drop it in the comments, but yeah, in the description box down below. But Drew, what would you offer in this that you've learned and where you're sitting at now as we kind of close out?
Yeah. I think I already touched on a lot, but like, I guess to end, like I just feel so strongly about like like how important money and personal finance is to our lives. Like whether we like it or not, like money
Yeah,
plays a big role in our lives, and a lot of people, they just don't. Well, one, maybe they just never had the opportunity to learn, right? Or never seeked it out. But like, that's like really like my main objective is like, I just want people to understand how important personal finance is, and I want, I want to educate it as well. But like I said, whether we like it or not, it plays such a big role in our lives. And like, if you don't take the time to get your to learn about it, and to get your money and your systems in order, and all that good stuff, right? Like I always say, you're kind of wasting your time
mhm.
at I hate, I feel, sometimes feel bad saying this, but you're kind of wasting your time at your job, right? If you're working your butt off at your job, but then you're
Yep.
not investing, you don't have your money in order, it's like you're missing out on all these gains potentially that you could be getting, right? And it's like, you're kind of wasting your time busting your butt at work if you're missing out on all these gains, but that you could be getting by investing and doing all this stuff. So that, like, I really feel so strongly about that, and that's just why, like, I'm kind of on this mission to help people and get the word out about personal finance, be transparent. And again, I just want people, like, everything, like, I really feel that everything went right in my scenario, and I feel lucky. Yeah, I feel very lucky about it. Like, I really do. Like, I stumbled. And so I don't want to sound like arrogant. I hope that doesn't sound arrogant or anything. But like honestly, everything went lucky. Like, I read this, my favorite book I always talk about on my live. It's called "I Will Teach You to Be Rich" by Ramit Sethi.
Right.
I read that when I was 23, and like, I just kind of stumbled down it. But I always think, like, into that book. But I always think about, like, what my life would be like if I didn't read that book. I probably would not have invested as much, and I would just not have. I probably wouldn't have as much as I do now, and I think my life would just be a little different. But that's why I feel very lucky and fortunate that I went down the path that I did, and that's why I feel so strongly about getting my kind of what I did out there, and helping people to hopefully go down a similar path and with their money and personal finances. But yeah, TikTok is great. It's like Jonathan was saying, I go live at least 2, 3, 4 times a day now that I'm trying to do this full time. And TikTok Live is amazing. Like, I'll even get on other creators live. Like, it's free. It's literally free.
Yeah.
You can talk to these people, about, I'll get on some lives about, I like working out and stuff like that too. So I'll get on, these workout people's lives and ask them questions. It's amazing. Like, TikTok Live, you can just ask all these people that are doing whatever, maybe something you want to do, something you want to get better. You can just go on and ask some questions, and it's free. It's amazing. So yeah, like I said, if you ever want to join, definitely follow me, and feel free to join the lives, and you can ask any question you would like. I do my best to answer all the questions, and help in any way I can. But yeah, that's really, I really feel very strongly about helping with personal finance and the education aspect, and just getting this message out there that we need to care about our money and think about our money. So.
No, so good, man. It's such an important thing to understand, the power that you have to build wealth, and you can do it through compound interest. Drew is doing it. I'm doing it. I stand behind it. I'm working in banking over a decade, and when you see the accounts and when you get the chance to kind of play with what they were doing on the graph, you're like, man. It's hard to dispute, like, when you've seen it, like, you're looking at the money in the account, you're like, oh, this is what they actually did. So the biggest thing that I like is the fact that at 32, understanding where I was and the decisions you get to make because of that decision. I'm pretty sure anytime you suppress an ability or anything, or you can go live a more comfortable life, but you're actively choosing not to. That's hard work. Like, we have our desire, but if anybody has ever been watched any video from anybody talking about money, and they talk about the compound power of compound interest, they always bring up, hey, if you started investing at 23 and stopped at 27 and never invested a dollar, this is what you'll have. And they're using an example of 2000. And you had a friend who started at 27 and invested all the way to they were 65. They invested 2000. Both of them are millionaires, but the guy who was 23 has about $800,000 more, be mostly, well, actually purely due to compound interest and time. And what he's done is, yeah, there's an average. We don't know. There'll probably be some years where you get 30. That's great. But the average I typically use, I stay in that 10 to 12 range. But it's just the fact that we don't know what's going to happen. But if you truly believe that, hey, the price of a cheeseburger is not going to be the same price in 10 years as it is now, that's why you need to be invested. If the products that you're paying for, gas, housing, all that, is not going to be the same price as it is now, if you truly believe that, and even if you don't believe it, if you see it, that it doesn't cost the same, that's why you invest. So I encourage you guys, take a look at his information. Keep coming back, but we're gonna have more conversation about what does wealth look like, because he has attained a certain level of wealth. It isn't millionaire, but he's definitely well on his way over the next couple of years. Thanks so much, Drew, and thank you guys for coming in.